Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, I flagged this video up at the back end of the last video because I think it's important. I think it's something that needs to be explored. And that is the precept that if you ask certain questions in certain ways, you can elicit one response. But if you ask the same question in a slightly different way, you can elicit a completely different response. It's a psychological trick. It's what you can use to kind of prove whatever you want, just simply by the phraseology. And we're going to have a look at this, which shows how the question of independence was phrased in such a way that it gave Nats an actual advantage. And so the very fact that the question gave them an advantage and they lost goes to show that national support for nationalism, for support for independence, is fairly low. And what this does show is two things. One, that the SNP are not as popular as perhaps they think they are. And that number two, on average, now not every one of them, but on average, the average SNP voter isn't as bright as they'd like to think either. Let's have a look at these numbers and see why the question matters often more than the answer. Here goes. So, major new poll proves the yes-no question is heavily weighted towards the Nats, and they still lost. And that goes to show that the SNP are living in a world of delusion, and that the support for actual independence is a lot less. And it truly is, because wait till you see these numbers. They'll blow your mind. For the first time ever, the same poll asked Scots two alternative questions about independence: yes, no, and leave remain. And it discovers that hundreds of thousands of Skexiteers think they can be both independent and part of the UK. The two are completely incompatible, of course, but this is the problem they have. Now, as I say, psychologically, yes is seen as more positive. And so you feel like you're enacting change, you're being positive and formal. And so if you're sort of, oh, I don't know, yes or no, you're more likely to vote yes than no, regardless of what the question is. And that is why the SNP have this feeling about, oh, look, we're so close, we're so close. You're not close at all. A new opinion poll has blown apart two of the SNP's biggest arguments for another independence referendum. Strikingly, the survey found that 12% of yes voters would say a separate Scotland could remain inside the UK. Clearly, they are bonkers and don't understand what independence actually means. This represents about 5% of the Scottish electorate, about 212,000 voters, and it suggests that the result of the 2014 ballot may have been very badly skewed by people who didn't understand the potentially disastrous and irreversible implications of a yes-no question. And here's the thing, you might have actually won that. Let's just say they scraped over the line with yes, but only because more people voted yes. But the vast majority would still have wanted to remain inside the UK. But because of the way the question was phrased, they're out. And it's permanent, because you guarantee you won't get a shall we go back in question on Indy Ref 3 anytime soon. So you're going to be now, Scotland would have gone third world, and yet most people would have actually wanted to have remained. And that is what we're going to find here. This is stunning numbers. I mean, seriously, set faces to stunned. The poll for the pro-UK organisation of these islands found that when Scots were asked if Scotland should be an independent country on a yes-no vote, the result was 55-45, much the same result as the referendum in 2014. The 55% represents the no's, the remain in the EU, remain in the UK. 45% saying it should be an independent country. Once the don't knows, that was the figures once the don't knows were removed. However, when asked if Scotland should remain in or leave the UK, the results were 63-37 for remain. It was a much bigger vote for remain than it was for no to independence. because of that skewing of a positive yes vote. For those who voted yes to leaving and remain for staying, these islands asked a follow-up question, which was, do you believe that Scotland can become an independent country and remain inside the United Kingdom? Most, 66%, agreed they thought it could be possible to have an independent country of Scotland that was still in the United Kingdom. 2/3 of them said that. 2/3 of these people are bonkers. Now, that's not 2/3 of the people who said yes. That's not 2/3 of the people who said remain. It's 2/3 of the people who said yes and remain. But it's still a lot, isn't it? Even when the question is phrased differently to a point where it's obvious that they're not the same thing. And they still voted yes. It's stunning numbers. Anyway, these islands said this means pro-independence cause gains at least 5 and perhaps as many as 7 percentage points in support from a yes-no question wording, support which is based on a fundamental misconception of what independence would mean, because you've shown how many people don't realise that independence means leaving the UK. And they're going, oh yeah, we'd like an independent Scotland, sounds good, independent Scotland. But when they realise afterwards that it actually means leaving the UK, it changes. Anyway, perhaps talk of independence within the EU has led some people to believe the possibility of independence within the UK. If this is the case, then those voters fail to grasp the fundamental differences between the unions of the UK and the EU. That is to say, in the UK you have a voice, and in the EU you do not. What we may be witnessing here, they say, is a combination of confusion about what independence from the UK actually means and the simple acquiescence bias that people tend to be agreeable and choose a positive affirming answers, which I mentioned at the beginning, where yes is heavily weighted for those who haven't really thought about the question. Either way, this polling demonstrates that when judging public opinion towards independence, or if there is ever to be another referendum, the evidence of pro-independence bias when using the yes-no question cannot be ignored. And so therefore, yes-no must not be the question. The question is far more important than the answer. The poll also asked about Humza Yousaf's much criticised plan for the next UK general election to be regarded as a de facto referendum. And after several different alternatives, the SNP leader now maintains that if his party wins the majority of Scottish seats, it will give him a mandate to start negotiations on breaking up the UK with the new Prime Minister. No, it won't. It really won't. It might get in his mind, it might give him a mandate, and he's going to go, can we talk about independence? And they'll go, no, and put the phone down. There you go. It's not a referendum. It means nothing. And anyway, he's not going to win the majority of seats. He'll be lucky to win any seats. In truth, Mr Yousaf and most within the SNP accept all this will mean start negotiations on holding another referendum, although both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have explicitly ruled out any prospect of talks. In other words, get on with it. You're not going to have one. Tellingly, most people in Scotland don't agree with him. Well, colour me surprised. With only 8% of the electorate saying winning a majority of seats would give the SNP a mandate for another ballot. Most people, 33%, say there should not be another referendum under any circumstances, with 19 saying there should be support of 60% or more for at least a year. In other words, it isn't going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But that number, coming back up here, this number here, if you change the wording from yes-no, where it was 55-45 in favour of remaining, and changed it to leave and remain, 63 to 37. So basically twice as many people want to stay in the UK as leave. It is the end of the SNP. It is the end of their dreams. No's have it by a long margin. So let us have another independence referendum. Let us have it But let's have the question, leave or remain? And I feel more than confident that it will be the end of the SNP when something like 2/3 of the country say remain. Stunning numbers. Stunning numbers. And it was weighted in their favour and they still lost. They've got no hope. Coming up. So there we are. The SNP utterly destroyed. I mean, totally destroyed. When the very question itself favours them and they lose, when it's rephrased in such a way that it's more neutral, they lose bigger. And when previous figures show that something like 60% of their own supporters don't actually want full independence, you have to query, why are they going on? Surely they know these figures. Surely they can read what's going on. Surely they must give it up and just say, never going to happen, is it? Why are we wasting our time? Well, they're not wasting their time, of course. They're all in it for the money, and that's all it is. It is a money-making scheme for them. Let's form a party. We can draw salaries. We can pay people. We can look important. And then we can go to Parliament and draw massive amounts of public money to do a job that we're quite incapable of doing. And only because nobody else would ever employ us. I think it's time to scrap the Scottish Parliament. It doesn't exist for the benefit of Scotland. It exists purely for the benefit of the SNP. Thank you very much for watching, and I am really pleased with those figures. I'm sure you are too. In fact, I suspect if you are one of those regular viewers who are yet to subscribe, those figures will have pleased you so much you're going to hit the subscribe button. That's for the rest of you. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you later. Bye.